sometimes you don't know what's in you until someone else pulls it out.
This is the District 7 podcast. My name is Ray Miller, and I am the host of the District 7 podcast. And today I am interviewing and have the pleasure of interviewing Valerie Preston, who has a long experience with Toastmasters over the last couple of years. And we're going to talk about a number of topics, a number of themes and challenges that have come up over the last couple of years. Valerie, I always start off my questions for this podcast with a non-Toastmaster specific question, and it's often becoming the same question that I'm asking every time, just because I like it, and it leads to a really great answer. Valerie, what is the best sandwich?
Ooh, well, you've asked the right person because I love to eat. So right now, the best sandwich for me is made at Jersey Mike's. There is rosemary Parmesan bread. There is turkey. There is ham. There is bacon, applewood bacon to be exact. And then I get it what they call Mike's Way. So, did I mention there's provolone cheese? So the Mike's Way has like vinegar and oil and pepper, and it's delicious. And I always have them cut it into fours. I get the size regular, and then I have them cut it into size fours so that I can have some now and have some later, which is normally falling in the same day.
I do the same thing. There's a couple of sandwiches that I get around North Vancouver, but I love that question because every time I get the answer, it's always a different story. And it's giving me a list of all restaurants and places to try out, different ways to have this. It's always a great story. My second question, and this is leading into our Toastmasters stuff. Can you tell us why you joined Toastmasters in the first place and why you're still involved with it now, or when and why?
Excellent questions. I actually joined a networking group, as you can see to my right, business networking group called BNI. And I did not realize when I joined BNI that there was so much talking involved. I thought I would just go meet a few people. But then I became the educational director. And then I became mentor. And now I currently serve as president. And in 2021, during COVID, I didn't know anything about Toastmaster, didn't know anyone in Toastmaster. But I saw an advertisement on Facebook that intrigued me. And it intrigued me, and this was May of 2021. And what intrigued me was the name of the Toastmasters was Faith-Based Toastmasters. And that intrigued me because I'm a member of the faith-based community. And I knew not one person, but I got my husband to join me in this group and said, we'll go, and if we don't like it, we'll leave. That was June 2021. I immediately got involved. I was immediately appointed or elected treasurer, and I still hold that same position today. And I immediately got involved in, quote unquote, the pathways. Now, granted, I had never considered writing speeches at all. Not my thing. I consider myself an introvert. but I tend to have extrovert tendencies, I guess.
Yeah, I relate to that.
And I thought I better get some help so that I could become a better communicator. Because every organization that I belong to, I tend to always have to talk a lot. And something that really intrigued me more than writing the speeches was the table topics portion, which I love so much that when I go on dates with my husband, we do a lot of table topics. I bring a box that have questions, and we answer the questions in a table topics format. Then I found another group of Toastmasters that was more related to my profession. By profession, I am a mobile notary public, and I found a notary masters Toastmaster group, which I thought, again, was intriguing. I was like, wow, a group of just notaries from all over the country? Wonderful. My thought, I would get to meet other notaries, network, and still do Toastmasters. So I could do the same speech twice. I could do it once, get my evaluation, do it better at the second one.
Introduction to contests, I think.
Yes.
Question about your BNI, not to cut you off.
Mm-hmm.
How long ago did you join the BNI group?
I joined BNI in the same year.
Oh, so they were both 2021.
They were both 2021.
And your Rotary, like the mobile notary business.
Notary? Mm-hmm.
You've been doing that for how long have you been doing that?
I became a mobile notary in 1990.
Wow. So that must have really that actually leads into another set of questions that I've got going, and I know we talked about this before. But 2021 was a really 2020 and 2021 was a year where a lot of people learned about mobile meetings in a way that they'd never really experienced that before. That wasn't an unusual experience for you, though, when you got into it.
No, sir. 2020 and 2021 was actually one of my most profitable years. And I say that because as a mobile notary, everyone was stuck at home.
Mm-hmm.
And people who were stuck at home found things to fix while they were home. Mm-hmm. So they would contact their banks, refinance their homes, use the extra money to fix up their homes. But to do a refinance, you need a notary. So I was busy going from home to home to home to home. Another great thing that happened in 2020 and 2021, because I'm also a wedding officiant, people were getting married. And people were getting married left and right. So during COVID, I was marrying people on the beach. I was marrying people in the living room. I was marrying people in the backyards. I was marrying people on the balcony through the bedroom. Wherever was local and intimate, I was marrying people.
Wow. I remember those years, 2020 and 21, and I was running workshops because I had learned how to run Zoom basically because I helped transition our district from being an in-person conference to being an online run conference. Okay. And at the same time, learning how to edit videos and stuff like that and running a YouTube, but it's not about me. So your experience led you in really great stead to be really powerful and really useful in 2021 and 2022, which leads to the next question on my list, which is, what is the Rookie of the Year award and how did you get that?
Well, that's an amazing question because I never heard of the Rookie Award. Didn't know there was such a thing. So I really can't tell you how I got it or what the criteria was. And the funny thing about the award, when I received the call, I was told that I needed to come to a meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, oh, well, what's the date and the time? They gave me the date and the time. I said, oh, I won't be able to make the meeting. I belong to a choir and we're doing a live recording of our album. She said, no, 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 no. I need you at this meeting. I said, no, 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 no. I've been in this choir 12 years. We waited 12 years to record. I'm going to be at this live recording. And so she finally gave up for about 2 weeks. And then she called me back. So are you sure you can't make this meeting? I said, I'm positive. Well, fast forward, and I found out that I won an award, the Rookie of the Year. I was very surprised. I didn't know anyone who had it before. But I will say that I am honored that I would be considered. I don't know if there were nominations or other people I was running up against, don't know. But I was honored that someone would think that as an area, because when I received it, I was the area director.
Mm-hmm.
And as the area director, someone thought that my commitment and dedication to my work as an area director was worthy enough to receive an award for it.
Well, yeah. I mean, I can imagine with your experience with remote meetings and your remote profession for years, you must have been asked to provide some assistance in a lot of very unusual circumstances and situations over the course of that year. And like I got the Toastmaster of the Year award, I think the same year, the year before. And I remember I was frustrated that whole year because I was constantly doing stuff. And it turns out that I was constantly doing stuff because people kept asking me to help. Was that like it was for you?
Yes, I received a lot of, during the contest season, I received a lot of requests for help.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't really know a lot about contests because, mind you, I was still a new, sort of new person in the field of Toastmaster. But I felt what better way to learn and to hear all these great speeches than to be involved in the contest.
Mm-hmm.
And I must say, I had great mentors in that field. I had Ellen and I had Miss Tampson. And those two ladies were amazing. And so I would join these contests and I would just help out, whether I was a judge. I think I served as Toastmaster twice, timer, ballot counter. I've served, I think, all the positions except for the sergeant at arms.
Mm-hmm.
And it was great. And I was also serving as a mentor in the notary chapter, in the notary masters chapter. So that was very, very helpful as well, because I think the mentor position is something that is really an unused, if you will, position in the chapters. And I see it as a significant part of what is needed, particularly when new members come in and they need someone, I think, to walk the journey along with them.
Yeah. And that's the key thing about mentors, at least in my experience in the Toastmasters world too, is mentors are very different from coaches. Whereas you bring a coach in that they have a very specific goal in mind. You're going to run faster, you're going to run harder, you're going to jump higher, you're going to focus in on a message or work on writing or cut some time down. Whereas mentoring is all about storytelling. It's all about I've been there. And yeah, I was upset. And yeah, I was stressed out. And yeah, I was all of that stuff. And I'm not any of those things anymore.
Exactly.
There is an end. There is an end to it all. So thinking back on Zoom, because I got a couple of thoughts about Zoom and Google Meets and Microsoft Teams, like all the various platforms that you have for doing remote meetings. You must have gone through the plethora of different softwares doing this. Is there one feature or kind of feature that you really appreciate in your remote meeting experience that people might not be super aware of?
Prior to COVID, I didn't really do anything online. All of, as a notary, I'm in person.
Mm,
In fact, there are some states, even though it's not California, which is where I reside, by the way.
yes.
California does not have online notarization, even though Oregon, for example, does. So my use of online was very minimal prior to COVID. After COVID, Zoom became my best friend, it appears. I did Zoom for my sorority meetings. I did Zoom for my In fact, Toastmasters is still all on Zoom. And then my BNI meetings were all on Zoom. So I've never had the opportunity to utilize any other type of online except for training. Now that I'm thinking about it, some training classes I have attended will be something other than Zoom, but it's more like a webinar to me where
Mhm.
it disabled the chat. You can't communicate with each other, which is good to some extent, and then it has its privileges. So, but right now I'm having fun with the Zoom. I like the convenience of the Zoom, but I know that people want that in-person touch. They want to touch you. Some people want to hug you. Some people don't want to be hugged. So you still have both of that in this day and time. But the Zoom has been very interesting for me. I love the in-person touch, meeting, hugging, looking at body language, or whether you do fist bumps. I'm
Mhm.
a hugger. I'm a hugger, and I love people, which is really working for me as a notary, really working for me as a Toastmaster, because I love meeting people, I love talking to people, and just love building relationships.
Oh, lovely. I'm leading into relationships and leadership specifically. With you having joined Toastmasters only in 2021, how long did it take before you accepted your first district leadership role? Because you ran right into area director almost immediately.
1 year later.
Literally 1 year
What
later.
literally, because this is what 2024, and it just became 2024. So 2021 I joined. 2022 I became an area director. 2023 I am now serving as Division B director.
Yes.
So I have seemed like going from progression to progression to progression, and now my husband is an area director. And
Hmm.
so it's interesting because he's in California, an area director. I was everything in Oregon. And so that's been really, really interesting because for me, all of my sessions have to always be online because
Yeah.
obviously there is no budget to send Valerie from California to Oregon every quarter.
No, of course not.
So I immediately went in headstrong. And I must say, my first home chapter, California, has been very supportive, even though it took them a minute to realize when I said, "Oh, I'm an area director." And they was like, but you said District 7. I said, yeah, even though I'm in District 1 as well. So it was very interesting and I support my home district and I support District 7. And so I went to work right away, which is what I tend to do. I
Yeah.
go in and I get involved. And even though I will admit this was never my intent was just to go join the club, learn how to be a better communicator, do a couple of speeches, and I'll be fine. And then here we are.
Well, it sounds like you've embraced the Toastmaster spirit, which is to try it out, be curious, not be afraid of failure, and always look for good feedback and to improve, because that's the way to do it. Have you ever heard the story? There's a story I heard a couple of weeks ago, actually, about an experiment that a teacher, this may not have been a real story. This may be one that was made up, but it lands with me. Is a teacher gives two different groups of students the same task or similar task. One group of students clay, and the instructions were to build the perfect clay pot. And the second group of students, they gave them the same thing, as much clay as they needed, and there was no instructions to make a perfect clay pot, but make as many pots as they could, just constantly improving, constantly improving, and constantly improving. So by the end, the first group that was told to make one perfect clay pot made a pretty good pot. But then the next group that made thousands of clay pots, they made a better clay pot than the first group, but they made a whole lot of terrible pots before they made that perfect clay pot. And that's the imagination I've got in the Toastmasters world, is it's always, no speech is ever completed when you're finished it. If anything, you're rewriting it as you're telling it, and it improves on that.
Exactly.
Mm.
I remember my first, what do you call it, icebreaker,
Yep.
which, and they said, oh, well, just tell us something about yourself. And I'm like, I've never done an icebreaker, never given, quote unquote, a bio of myself. And so it required me a lot of thought. And I kept saying, wow, what do I think about this? And I ended up calling it My Thoughts, or something similar to that. And it just reminded me, sometimes you don't know what's in you until someone else pulls it out. And after the speech, I was really, really proud of myself because I had never done that before. Everyone in the room thought it was wonderful. And I thought, okay, I had that in me, didn't know it. And I think coming to Toastmasters helped me to pull some things out, because I'm not a writer. Not my kind of thing. However, it has taught me this is a skill set that I can do, because I had to put some thought to it and to deliver the speech, when normally I'm the background person. I'm an administrator for 2 or 3 different groups. I'm in the background. But for this, Toastmaster brings you up front. Yeah.
I feel like I need to introduce you to the president of my Toastmasters club, because she was the parliamentarian for District 96 for several years. And she has many interesting ways to talk about Robert's Rules of Order. And I have a note from our pre-interview where that came up, and where you mentioned you have some thoughts about that you would lean
Yes,
into.
I have 2, I belong to 2 parliamentary clubs, both. Well, one is online because they were in, where are they? Washington, D.C. So that one is strictly online for me. And then the other one I do attend in person, and that's here in California. And I've been a member of that particular club. I want to say I joined in 2008. So parliamentary procedure is something that has always piqued my interest and stayed with me, with Robert's rules and how many people use what I call use it as chess. They're making moves with the moves and the amendments and the rights. I move to do this, or I move to do that. And if you don't follow what's going on, you will get lost on what you're actually voting on. So it's always interesting to me to just watch the dynamics of parliamentary procedure at work. And I know I've even been at deck meetings where I will say, oh, someone made a motion, or someone will say, I so move. That's an incorrect way to make a motion. But people, because of traditions, have heard it for years, they let it go. For
Yeah.
people who practice parliamentary procedure, it makes us itch.
Well, yeah. My I know Toastmasters, DTMs who've been in Toastmasters for decades, and they listen to politicians talk, and they'll filler words in between and they'll end up muddying what they're talking about with there's filler words in between their thoughts, and it drives them nuts. But my thought about Robert's Rules of Order is always it's kind of that same Mr. Miyagi wax on, wax off. It's almost it is boring in its simplicity, but it is really useful in its repetition to create almost muscle memory.
You're absolutely right. This morning, I had my sorority meeting, and I serve as the parliamentarian for my chapter. And we are currently working on bylaws. And when I got up to give my report, we are arguing or discussing, if you will, about one particular bylaw change. And we got through that process. And then I stood up and said, on behalf of the bylaws committee, I move that we accept all of the bylaws and to be in effect April 1st, 2024. And I said, because it's coming from the committee, it does not require a second. Well, if someone doesn't know it doesn't require a second, someone may say second because I said I move or something like that. So it's always parliamentary. It's a learning thing, but yes, it is very boring, but it keeps order. It keeps structure. Just following an agenda sometimes can go way off the path. This morning, as the parliamentarian, one of the things I said, we will have 2 slides in 3 minutes.
Yeah.
You can't have 4 slides because I saw someone had 4 slides. And I said, hey, our reports have to be 3 minutes or less so that we can get out of here and move on with our day, because I know I had a date at 3 o'clock.
Yes, absolutely. And I thank you for making it to this date. It's an interesting conversation always. Now I'm moving on because now I know you've been involved with district roles now as a division director, now Division B. Side note, I was also Division B director in District 96, which has
Wow.
the second oldest club in Canada, Club 59. So if you know club numbers, then you know Club 59
Was
is the
before
59th.
96. Yeah.
It is the first, no, Club 59 is the 59th Toastmasters club in the world ever.
Wow. The world.
In the world. There is an earlier club that still exists in Victoria, and I don't remember the club number it had, but I believe it's in the 30s. So it's like Club 30 something, but Club 59 was founded in 1936 or something like that. So like 12 years after
Wow.
Toastmasters started initially. But yeah, that division director role, I found it to be revelatory because now I've got all of my area directors who are doing the things that I did the year previous, but also I've got all of the clubs under all of the area directors. So I'm filling in for area directors when I can as well, when they need some help. And just the diversity of clubs that I had engagement with, that I did area visits for some area directors that couldn't make it. And I saw lots of routines and things that I was not aware of that I found really enlightening. Do you have an example of any of that now as Division B director current, where you've had any of that pop up, surprised you?
When I was the area director, I had a college under me, the University of Oregon. And now I am the division director, and I have not only University of Oregon, now I have Oregon State, which I believe are rivals. And that is fun. That's fun. That's fun. I had the honor of visiting when I was the area director University of Oregon's, and their Toastmaster was so much fun. Maybe because it was just young people, and they would hug one another, and I would be obviously the only one on Zoom because I'm in California, but all of them would be in person. I find that now that I'm the division, I don't get to visit them as often, but every time they have a meeting, they send me an invite.
You're still on the list.
I'm still on the distribution, and they're talking about how great their meeting was. And that's something I don't see too much of a recap. And then there's another group called North Eugene. And one of the things I noticed that they didn't have enough members in the group. And so every Tuesday morning, I get up to go to this 7 a.m. Zoom. And the area director also gets up and joins the same Zoom so that they can be encouraged to know, okay, you got 4 people in your group. The area and I will make it 6. We will continue. We will take on the roles. We will do the speeches. We will do the evaluations. We will serve whatever the roles are because we want you to keep going. They thought about, oh, maybe we should just stop. But we said, no, we want you to keep going because we know you can do it. Last Tuesday, I want to say they had 3 new members. That is amazing. Only because they kept going. If they had stopped, these 3 people would have never seen them because they would have been off the grid. But just to know that with myself and the area director helping where we can, that is showing them volumes. I hope and pray that they can see you have support. You have support. We are here for you. We will continue because 7 a.m. is a little early for me for any Zooms, but I make the sacrifice. Why? Because I think it's worth it.
Nice. Very nice. I'm reminded of some of the experience I had as a Division B director and some of the recommendations that I gave to 2 clubs that I had in my area, like the Club 59 that I mentioned before. They have a large volume because they were the only club in Vancouver when it was founded. It's called the Vancouver Toastmasters Club. So if you look for Vancouver Toastmasters, it comes right top of the list because it's very searchable. And the University of British Columbia had a Toastmasters club too they both had very similar yet different challenges in that Vancouver Toastmasters had really high membership all the time. So they would have people that come in and they just want to learn how to get a speech done. And they go off and do the wedding and do whatever it was that they wanted to do. So they have a high membership, but also a high turnover of membership.
Yeah.
And then the university had the same problem. They had a high membership and a high turnover of membership, but their high turnover of membership was for graduating people who left on university campuses. So the recommendation I gave to both of those clubs is to keep track of the people that were members and connect them up with other clubs, because as they move, how do they stay involved? If you spend.
Yes. Yes, I've had that same conversation with University of Oregon, for example. My concern was once they graduate, because it's a high turnover rate. And you had people who were studying abroad for a semester, so they was leaving, or people who were just graduating, or they take breaks because spring break or winter break or finals or whatever. So they were taking consistent breaks. But yes, the connecting of once they leave the undergraduate level, how do they connect and transition into another, if you will, another viable chapter or an option for them is something that's that's a whole nother project and a whole nother discussion.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's other discussions that can carry on forward from any one of these questions and from experience, much like, well, the icebreaker example that you've had. I've given, I don't know how many icebreakers now, and I've realized that every single thing I've ever done can be an icebreaker if you put it in the right
Yeah,
story.
yes.
It, thinking about you as a district leader, but now also as a club member, how do you stay involved at the club level? Keep focusing on your own improvement as a club member, storyteller, speech giver, evaluator as a club member without getting tripped up as a division director, for example?
Yes, I will say, I will use, for example, the notary masters to answer your question. In that particular group, when we chartered, I chartered in the role of a mentor because I, along with the president, Daniel Brewer, were already Toastmasters in other groups. So we were familiar with the process. When the group joined together, we had everyone who was in the same profession but knew nothing about Toastmasters. So that meant, along with me becoming or serving as a mentor, I also had to do an icebreaker because I had to show them we got the notary part right. And it's almost like a corporate club because we're all in the same profession, but we were not there per se to be a notary group.
No.
We were a notary Toastmasters group. So there were some things that we needed to do that was Toastmaster and not necessarily notary. Now, I will say and give the caveat, we do specialize in certain things like the tip of the day for notaries or dear notary master, so that if someone has a question, well, how can I do better in my job? But now, think about it, that could be a speech.
Mm.
You can do a speech on what is the problem and how did you solve it? Or that could be a table topics. And we have, when we started, of course, 20 people. When we meet, we have about 40 people.
Oh.
But out of the 40 people, now I would say maybe 8 of them are actually members.
Mm.
So you have, what attracts them is the notary part. But what we're trying to do is keep them, which should be the Toastmaster part. And how I tend to put the line between me being a division and a member is I try to show by example. I try to be in whatever roles are needed. I try to serve as a Toastmaster. I try to serve as a speech, giving a speech, or I try to serve as an evaluator or a timer, whatever the roles are, so that they see I'm not there doing notary stuff. I never take any of the notary roles. I never take dear notary master. I never take the tip of the day. I always take those roles that are Toastmasters specific so that they can see in action what the Toastmasters roles are. And we have been successful in getting people to join, but that's where they stop. They don't go with the break, giving the icebreakers, but they will participate in the table topics, but they won't be the table topics master. They'll answer the questions. So it's a tiny, we're taking tiny steps in that particular, but I have to show by way of example what it is that we can do in Toastmaster. And then I try to explain by learning how to do these table topics. You can use that when you go to your client, your notary client, and you might have some time when you're waiting for another person to come home because maybe the wife is there, but the husband hasn't gotten home. You need to have a conversation with the lady or the man, right? You need to be able to hold a conversation. You need to be able to talk about something which may be non-notary related. You may see a picture, for example, a family picture, that's something for you could talk about. Oh, how long have you been married? I see you have dogs or pets. Whatever it is, make it a table topics opportunity, but you practice at Toastmasters.
Absolutely. The story changes as we tell it. As we gain more familiarity with our stories, we
Yes,
tell them differently.
yes,
And we also let them land differently. And they
yes,
even have different lessons as we tell them over and over and over again.
yes, sir.
I'm coming to the end of my list of prepared questions. And there is one thing that I always ask every guest in this podcast, which is to provide a question for my next guest. But before we do that, I'm going to ask you a question from my last guest, who was recorded yesterday. So I went through my transcript and actually pulled that question out and have it in my notes here. So I'm going to read it to you because the person who asked this question, his name is John Morrow. He's known he's in District 84, so he's written books and a couple of books, and he's an active Toastmaster as well. And he asks a question for my next guest, which is, because of your experience, what is the best medication for the failure that hurts you the most?
What is the best medication for the failure that hurts me the most? Prayer. Prayer is the medication that I take several times actually during the day. Not that I hurt a lot during the day, but I am being a proactive person. So I cover myself with prayer when I wake up. I cover myself with prayer before I go to sleep. Because when I wake up, I'm not really sure of what items might hurt me throughout the day. So I figure if I do proactive work, meaning my prayer life, then I'm preparing myself for what might come. Then, of course, throughout the day, when it does come, I'm praying again and saying, okay, God, I need your help. I need your strength. I need your wisdom. And at the end of the day, I'd be like, whoo, God, we made it. We made it together. We made
I
it
think
through.
I think John would appreciate that answer very much. In fact, I'll make sure I send him this video once it's edited and uploaded. Carrying on, what are you working on right now that we can watch for Valerie Preston in the next month, 6 months, a year, whatever? What's a thing that you would like to promote that maybe we can help boost?
Toastmaster related or non-Toastmaster related?
Valerie related.
Valerie related. Within the next 6 months.
Or year, or where is Valerie going to shine that we can watch
Ooh.
for?
Well, last Saturday, or maybe it was 2 Saturdays now, we completed our video shoot for our second single that's coming out with the choir that I mentioned. And that single will be coming out on Easter, and it's entitled No Turning Back. And it's with the Radio Free Voices. And the Radio Free Voices is a choir that is connected to the KJLH radio station. And that radio station is owned by Stevie Wonder. So we are somewhat Stevie Wonder's choir. So you could be on the lookout for that. August 10th, I, along with my husband, will have the opportunity and the blessing to be first-time grandparents.
Oh, wow.
So we're looking forward to anyone who knows me. I'm beyond excited for this. My son and his wife are having a baby, and we are over the over the moon, over the moon, excited. What else will be going on in the next? I will actually be taking a cruise in April to Vancouver,
Oh, wow.
and we are going to be stopping in Oregon.
Oh, wow.
So I am going to attempt to try to meet, when I get off the ship, some of the beautiful Oregon people that I've only met online, and see if
Attend an
we can meet for
in-person
dinner,
meeting.
right, in person.
Attend an in-person meeting. So so that's Vancouver, Washington. I'm in Vancouver, Canada. So I'm farther north in
Yes,
Vancouver.
going from Oregon to Canada, and then Vancouver, we fly out of Vancouver.
Oh, wow. Well, when you're in town, maybe I'll try and meet up with you for a tea at some point.
Yeah, I told
Uh,
my husband, I said, I need to look it up and get all the schedules.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So that's where one place where we can look for you. And then the
Yes.
last thing I will ask, and I won't necessarily include this in the recording of the video, but I need a question for my next guest. And I would ask you to provide that for me. Is knowing my next guest, the only thing I have scheduled right now for my next guest, I don't have any booked right at the moment. I have a few that are in the pipeline to get scheduled, but they're a Toastmaster. They're involved in Toastmasters. They have something interesting to talk about, I guess. We're going to find that out when I get to that. But what would you ask my next guest?
What song makes you happy every single time you hear it?
I think that's a great question. I think that's an absolutely great question. The funny thing is right now I have some compilation of Stevie Wonder in my head, and that's all your fault. I'm gonna give that blame to you. Valerie, I'm gonna wrap things up. I think I've gone through the list of questions. Is there anything that you feel like I could have asked you, should have asked you? Well, maybe there always is. There's always going to be more questions to ask, everything to go through. Valerie, thank you for joining me on this call. Thank you for joining me on this conversation for District 7 podcast. And I definitely want to link to the video for your choir's recording. And if the timing works out, I will upload it to the description of this video when it goes live too, so they can all know where to find it.
Thank you. Thank you. I sure will. I sure will. We just did the video, so right now it's being edited, and so I look forward to sharing it with you as soon as it is ready.
That was episode 12 of the District 7 podcast. My name is Ray Miller. Thank you for watching this video to the end. I want to thank Valerie Preston for being my guest and for our great conversation. We talked about the many tools available to lean into great leadership from a distance. This is the District 7 podcast, presented by Podmasters, Toastmasters. The contact information is just below me and also in the video description. We have a few more episodes to release before my run as District 7 podcast chair comes to a close. I will move on to the next edit now.